Welcome to episode 495 of the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I'm Ashley Scott Meyers, screenwriter and blogger at sellingyourscreenplay.com. Today I am interviewing Cal Barnes, who was on episode 290 of the SYS podcast, so check that out if you haven't already listened to it. In that episode, he talked about his background making his move from down to Los Angeles from Portland and getting his first feature film off the ground. This week, he returns to give us an update on his first feature film, which is now finished, and he has a lot of insight into making a really low-budget film. One of the most interesting things about this talk that I had with him was that he shot this film on an iPhone. The phones now are getting such high quality. This is becoming easier and easier and actually can produce a pretty high quality image. So it's actually something I'm considering doing for my next feature too. So I was very interested to hear how he did this, but lots of great, very practical information about getting your low budget feature into production. So stay tuned for that interview. If you find this episode valuable, please help me out by giving me a review in iTunes or leave me a comment on YouTube or retweeting the podcast on Twitter or liking or sharing it on Facebook. These social media shares really do help spread word about the podcast, so they're very much appreciated. Any websites or links that I mentioned in the podcast can be found on my blog in the show notes. I also publish a transcript with every episode in case you'd rather read the show or look at something later on. You can find all the podcast show notes at www.sellingyourscreenplay.com/podcasts, and then just look for episode number 495. If you want my free guide, How to Sell a Screenplay in 5 Weeks, you can pick that up by going to sellingyourscreenplay.com/guide. It's completely free. You just put in your email address and I'll send you a new lesson once per week for 5 weeks, along with a bunch of bonus lessons. I teach the whole process of how to sell your screenplay in that guide. I'll teach you how to write a professional logline and career letter and how to find agents, managers, and producers who are looking for material. Really is everything you need to know to sell your screenplay. Just go to sellingyourscreenplay.com/guide. So just a couple quick words about what I've been working on. This episode is going to publish on July 31st, which is actually the final day. We're taking submissions for our screenplay contest and film festival. So if you've been procrastinating on making a submission, this is definitely your last opportunity for this year, but we will be back next year as well. So if you missed it this year, for sure, check us out next year. But that's been my main focus for now, just trying to get the festival and the contest organized, keeping them on track. I'm slowly making some headway on my indie rom-com, doing a rewrite on that, but that's slow going, and just a lot of other things right now have sort of priority. I've just got a lot of things on my plate. Also, I entered into a non-exclusive option agreement with a producer this week for one of my crime thriller screenplays. It was actually through one of the leads that go through the SYS Select service. It's a British producer who's got a few scripts together, and he's putting a package together of 3 or 4 scripts to take to a production company and pitch. He's hoping that one of them gets picked up. Obviously, this is a long shot. I mean, if he's got 3 scripts, 33% chance, 4 scripts, 25% chance, but really it's much less than that because there's a good chance the production company rejects all of the scripts that he pitches. But that's okay with me. I mean, the script is just sitting on my shelf at this point, so why not let him go out and pitch it? And while it is a long shot, it's better than no shot. So just to kind of take a step back and sort of explain my thinking on option agreements, I'll just give a kind of a real overview. A basic option agreement on a screenplay is a simple contract that allows the producer to shop the script to production companies to try and raise financing. And it also sets out that he has a right to buy that script at a later date for a set amount of money. Usually the producer will pay something for this because it's typically an exclusive agreement, meaning the writer agrees not to let other producers shop the script while this producer has it under option. And he gives that producer a set amount of time to go and shop that script where he's not going to give it to other producers. The producer needs this because if the producer spends time getting financing in place, pitching at production companies, he or she wants to be sure that they can actually buy the script for the pre-negotiated amount if they get the deal set up. They don't want to spend all this time getting the deal set up and then, oh, by the way, the script has already been sold to somebody else. So most of the time a producer wants a exclusive option agreement. And frankly, I usually, assuming the time frame is very short, like 90 days or maybe even 6 months, I usually don't have a big problem giving a very inexpensive or free or almost free option agreement to a producer as well. But in this case, the producer doesn't want an exclusive option, and it's because he doesn't want to option all of the scripts that he's taking to pitch. frankly, he's going to get an answer he's going to take it to a production company or a few production companies that he has contacts with, and he's going to get an answer pretty quickly. So he doesn't need the script for a year or 18 months or anything like that. He just needs it for a few months so he can take it out, pitch it, and get a response back. And he doesn't want to outlay a bunch of money at this point on a bunch of scripts that he knows won't get produced. I mean, as I said, he's got 3 scripts he's taken to a production company. He knows 2 of the 3, at least 2 of the 3, are not going to get picked up. So that's why he's willing to take a non-exclusive option agreement, because he doesn't want to pay for it. That's sort of the compromise that we're making. Now, the risk he's taking is that I might find another buyer for the script before he gets an answer back from the company he's pitching. And that obviously would be embarrassing if he takes it, pitches to a company, they read the script, and then a month later they come back and say, hey, we really like this, we want to produce it. And then in the meantime, I've come back and said, oh, sorry, I already sold it to someone else. So that's the risk that he's taking by not paying, and by not paying for the option agreement and not having an exclusive option agreement. But as a practical matter, it's really not that much of a problem. I mean, I'm not going to go and aggressively market this script for the next, 90 days. I'll give him a chance to kind of take it out. There's really, I've got plenty of scripts to try and pitch and to market. So, and I got plenty of scripts sitting on my shelf. So the odds of somebody just swooping in and optioning or buying this script in the next 90 days or 4 months or 5 months or something is frankly pretty low. And as I said, I'll sort of push it down on my list of scripts that I'm sending out or pitching to people, just because I know this guy's at least out there trying to do something with it. So I think it's a pretty good compromise, both for the writer and for the producer. This is a script I wrote years ago. It's not something that I'm actively, pursuing it. I've optioned it numerous times. In fact, this might have been one of the first options I ever mentioned on my podcast. I think I started the podcast, and very shortly after this screenplay, so however many years ago that was now, I started the podcast, and this was one of the first options that I had to another producer who was in Texas. She optioned it, tried to take it, and I think she had it for 6 months or a year or something. So this is a script I've optioned several times. It's gotten some traction, but it's never quite gotten over the finish line. But at this point, as I said, I've got tons of scripts. So for me, where I sort of sit here, I don't have a big problem with these types of agreements. I know there's some debate, and I get a lot of questions about option agreements. Oh, should I give a free option or this? And I just try and look everything through sort of a practical lens. And clearly this producer liked the screenplay. I sent it to him. He read it. He liked it. He emailed me back. So, I could have tried to grind him. Oh, I want $500 or $1,000 for the option. But I think there's a good chance that he would have just said no and moved on to another script, because he didn't want to outlay a bunch of money at this point. And you can say, okay, well, maybe that means he's not that serious. And that's a valid point. I mean, if he doesn't have even $500 to lay out these scripts, how serious is he really? And so that's definitely a valid point. But I just feel like, building relationships, kind of getting things going is more important. There's really no cost to me. Maybe I could have gotten $500 out of the guy, but I doubt that I could have. And ultimately, what would it have really served? I mean, it would have gotten the relationship kind of off to the wrong foot. I mean, I'm willing to work with the guy. I understand where he's coming from. I do production myself, so I certainly understand where he is coming from. And if this was a script I had just finished and I really wanted to get out there and market it aggressively over the next year, I might have been a little bit more reticent to do something like this. But for a script like this that's been sitting on my shelf, really haven't done anything. I think, as I said, I've optioned it a bunch of times, but I don't think I've optioned it in at least 3 years, 4 years. It's been a while where it's just been sitting. So I feel pretty good about this. He gets a free non-exclusive option. If something does turn up and somebody wants the script, all I got to do is email him and tell him and say, hey, I've got some interest from another party. And, and at that point, obviously he would go and contact that production company that he's pitching and say, hey, this script got swooped up. So if you haven't read it, don't bother. But I feel pretty good, as I said, just getting a script out there, having somebody else go out and do some of that marketing for me. So that's sort of where I land on these things with the free options and the exclusive versus the non-exclusive. Anyway, those are some of the things that I've been working on. Now let's get into the main segment. Today I am interviewing writer, director, and actor Cal Barnes. Here is the interview. Welcome, Cal, to the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. Really appreciate you coming back on the show with me today.
Hey, Ashley. Thanks for having me. Good to be back.
So you were on the podcast before in episode 290. So I will refer people back to that episode. We got into your background information, how you moved to Los Angeles and kind of jump started your career here. So I highly encourage people to go check that out again. That's episode 290. But today we're going to dig into your film, The Astrid Experience. So maybe just to start out, you can give us a quick picture log line. What is this film all about? What is this film?
Yeah, so the Astrid Experience it's an independent drama film, and it's about an artist in recovery who is kind of bottomed out in his life. He's made a lot of bad decisions, and he's trying to put his life back together. And then he meets a free-spirited actress at a casting studio. He helps her unlock her keys out of her car, and it kind of kicks off this sort of magical all-night adventure through Los Angeles. And it kind of shows him that he has something more worth living for again.
Gotcha. So let's talk about the writing of this script a little bit. Originally, in some of the notes that we had emailed back and forth, it sounds like you wrote a draft of this back in 2012 and then did some revisions as you got more financing in place, as you decided that you were going to shoot this on a shoestring budget. Maybe you can talk to that. What was the original draft? What was the original intent? And then how did you hone it down for actual production?
This was like my, I think, 10th script, around there, 11th. And I was really wanting to write. I was really influenced by like the mumblecore movement at the time. Just the idea. I was mainly acting and auditioning, and I started writing. I found a lot of freedom and control through writing that I just felt like I didn't have as an actor. And I was really influenced by these films of people just going out and shooting. It was mostly DSLRs at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So I started writing scripts. This is before the iPhone and everything, before the black magic, really. And I just started writing screenplays that I felt that I could produce on a shoestring budget if I got around to it. So I had this, I think I was dating, or I was like seeing this actress at the time, or I was working with her. And we had this like walk through Hollywood, from like Hollywood and Highland to Hollywood and Vine. And I just thought it'd be cool to write like a story around that. So I basically wrote an outline in 2012, and I didn't have any financing. I didn't really have many filmmakers. I mainly still am a writer and actor for the most part. And I remember we just shelved it, I kind of just shelved it at the time. And then it's kind of funny, as you stay here longer. I think I've been here for like 14 years now. It's funny how scripts will come back around 7, 8 years later sometimes. And I'm experiencing that again, actually right now. So so this film, I wrote it in 2012, and then, through a series of steps, it went into production in 2019.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that first step. It sounds like when you actually got principal photography done, you shot it on a $17,000 budget on your iPhone. Maybe you can speak to that a little bit. Number one, so how did you raise the $17,000 first off, and then where do you actually spend that $17,000? Like, just so sort of viewers can listen. If you're going to go shoot a micro budget film, where do you recommend, if you only have $15,000-$20,000, where do you recommend people put that $15,000-$20,000?
That was mainly financed. It was mainly financed by my co-producer, John That, who did this incredible soundtrack for the movie with his band Academy, who's they got a couple songs in NBA 2K 2021 and 2022. So that was huge. And he's been awesome. And then I financed the other about 15-20% of it at the time. And I would say, like, how do we do it? I wrote a script. So I remember when we wanted to do it, he asked me, I did a music video for him. I directed a music video and produced around 2016, called Hippie Girl. And that ended up being one of his best, most popular music videos. So he kind of came back around and was like, hey, you got anything we can make? You have a script. And so I was like, let me look through my library, because I think I had about 17, 18 features at the time. And I knew I had some big budget ones, but I also knew I had some smaller budget ones. And I found this, and I was like, I've experienced a lot since 2012. And I was like, why don't I take that 50-page, 60-page sort of kind of like, semi-developed script and just infuse the rest of my life experience with it, while also keeping an eye on like writing out a list of like, what do we have available? So, what locations, and I've been here for, between the two of us, for I think at the time it was like 10, 11 years. You're going to have a lot more connections, and you're going to know a lot more people than when you first move here. So keeping that list, I think, is really smart. So I was just like, what locations do we have? What talented friends do we have? What talents do we have together? And, I kind of rewrote a script around that, like with like with what locations we had, plus like all my experience that I've had since I wrote the original draft, and I created the Astrid Experience, what became the Astrid Experience. And so that's what was key, is writing for something that can be made. So we're like, all right, so now we have this money between us, and like, what can we get for free and what can't we? So I mean, I think honestly, I'm trying to remember where that money went, because we shot this in 2019, and I think it mostly went to some of the lead cast that we casted, that people like we didn't know that we auditioned, just because it's, to get a certain caliber of talent, I feel, especially for lead roles, you got to offer something. I mean, it's just really, really difficult to get anyone without some kind of rate. So, I mean, because people do make films for where, everything's deferred. I think we did defer some casts, casts that we kind of just casted without auditioning, that just fit. But for lead roles, we definitely paid for that. And then food, if you're getting a lot of people to work for really low, is just feed them really good. So, I mean, we spent thousands of dollars on food, like every night, eating in nice restaurants or getting good takeout. Also, some locations we probably a few grand on locations. The rest would be like just transportation and crew and equipment. So that was key. It's like we got the iPhone. So the iPhone thing, I was really inspired by Tangerine by Sean Baker. And he shot that 4K on an iPhone 5, I think, or an iPhone 4. And I was like, well, the technology's come a long way since then. I was like, I wonder what we can do on an iPhone. I think an 8. I think we shot it on an 8 Plus. So I was like, we should probably be able to get a much better image than he did, hopefully. And so, the benefits of shooting on an iPhone were fantastic, because we went into these huge raves. We shot on Hollywood Boulevard. We shot all over the place, and we really got very little hassle. When people would come up to us, we would just kind of be like, we're shooting an Instagram video. We would just kind of say that, and people would just leave us alone. And I mean, that's something that, I mean, if you watch our film and you see all the locations, if we shot that like on a red, or we shot on a bigger camera, it would for sure be, the budget would be at least, 4 or 5 times what we made it for, I think, just because we'd have to get the permits, we'd have to get a bigger crew, it would take longer, we'd have more shooting days. So yeah, I mean, just the ability to just shoot and go, and then you just kind of, that really saves a lot of money and time.
Yeah. Now I actually interviewed Sean Baker with Tangerine on the podcast years ago. And my recollection is that while he did shoot it on an iPhone, he definitely knew how to get the most out of the iPhone. And my recollection was there were definitely some lenses, some aftermarket lenses and stuff, attachments that he put on the phone. Probably some sort of a steady cam. Maybe you can speak to that. What other equipment? So obviously everybody has a cell phone in this day and age that has a camera, a video camera on it. But what else did you have to get? Was there some software to download? Are there some lenses that you put on the front? Is there some sort of a steady cam rig that you use to hold it?
This is a great question. I could go on and on about this, because like what I learned from our DP is when you're shooting in 4K, it's really more about if what you have in front of the camera isn't good, you're just seeing more of what's not good. So like that was a huge lesson. And really, I mean, when people watch our trailer, when they watch our film, I mean, no one has any idea. I mean, I think there's even some of the most trained DPs and filmmakers that have seen it didn't know. They thought we shot on way nicer cameras. So I can't stress enough, what you shoot on and like the equipment and then the post-production tools just really saved us. I basically copied Sean Baker's rig almost verbatim, with just at least the lens. I got the Moondog anamorphic lens. They actually sponsored our film. One point, it basically it takes a widescreen image 16:9, and it takes it out to an anamorphic. So we shot 2391. So we shot CinemaScope basically, which was great. I mean, that really takes it to the next level. And we shot 4K obviously on the iPhone. And then we built the custom rigs for it, like our DP. We have a couple. We had I think we had the Oslo, trying to remember the name, but it was like an electronically stabilized rig. So it just gave you really smooth, steady cam. Like you could I think it's called the Osmo 2. It was like $150, and it just created really awesome, really smooth, electronically stabilized shots. So like that was key, because we shot most of it handheld. Whenever we didn't have control over the location, we almost always shot handheld. Some of the interiors we did it. And then we had the B script, which are at DP. We bought them both for him. And he really liked the B script because it just kind of gave you, we put an external mic on it, the Rode mic, shotgun mic. We also had lavs, but we used that just because it gives you better sound. And then we had like a light, like an LED light on top of the iPhone as well on the B script, which just gave like a little bit more light to subject in front. We also had like guys, carrying. So that's key too, is the iPhone sensor. It's really important. It's not that great. I think it's better now because like it's at like 14 now. So I don't even know what the specs are on those. It's probably amazing because we shot this on an 8. But the sensor was really the only limitation because you're shooting 4K. I think it was an 8-bit sensor. And ideally you really want like at least a 10-bit sensor. You can get a little more dynamic range, but we we had a LED light mat that's kind of like this big mat that has lights on it. And it's really like maneuverable and it gives really good light. So we like tape that to a pole and our DP would like hold that over the actors at night, which just gave us like enough light. Like it's still very indie and gritty in those night shots, but I think we kind of leaned into it as part of the movie rather than fighting it because it was just impossible to light those scenes on our budget. So yeah, I mean, just getting good lighting. We got the Sterilights too, which are like these tube lights you'll see them a lot in music videos that like they give off really good color. And so on the party scene, that's like 20 minutes in the middle of the movie, you'll see stairs everywhere. And we got incredible light with that. So good lighting, good equipment. Yeah, like the anamorphic lens was key. A good rig, you're going to need that because you don't want to be holding the iPhone like that's just not going to give you the smoothest shot. So that was key. And then post, we were a little concerned going into post. We really had some blown out footage from the lights and darks. But what you can do I learned basically, post was literally nothing less than post-production hell. I mean, we were in post for like 3 years trying to get through COVID. And I can go later into how we raise more money into that. But basically the post tools, like what you can do with Premiere, you can cut in Premiere, and then what you can do, which I'm even more impressed with, DaVinci Resolve. I mean, what you can do with that is unbelievable. I mean, there's this tool that's really key that thank God it exists. It's called the Neat Noise Reduction tool. And it's like a $400 or something like that. And it's one-time payment. You download it into the Resolve and it just fixes blown out images like these. I mean, we'd have these lights and darks that are just posturizing and breaking up like so bad. I mean, it looked terrible. Like we're like, oh man, it's really, really bad. And this tool came in and the ability to restore like a clean image is just unreal. I mean, I remember when I was color grading it, I think I spent like 3 or 4 months taking color grading classes because we just really didn't have the budget. We did raise some money, but we raised about half as much as we wanted. So I had to learn to do a lot of this on my own. And yeah, what you can do with DaVinci Resolve is just truly remarkable.
Yeah, I mean, I've used it a little bit too. It's a free software, so it really is incredible.
And the full suite, if you're serious, you do want to get the full suite because it has just enhanced. It's only $300, like one-time payment, but the tools are just unbelievable. I mean, yeah, I'm still blown away. The whole time I was grading it, I just was like, I can't believe this image looks like this from where we started. Yeah.
So let's talk about the post-production a little bit. You mentioned that you cut a trailer and then were able to raise some more money on WeFunder. Maybe you can speak to that a little bit. Just how did you do that specifically?
Yeah, so WeFunder we were kind of second wave. You always want to be somewhere first wave, but we were kind of second wave. And I was listening to a lot of podcasts, filmmaking podcasts while I was making this, yours and everybody else's. I mean, all of them, and I heard something about this WeFunder, which was kind of like a Kickstarter except instead of based on donation based, it was equity based. So that to me right away just solved all the problems inherent with Kickstarter. Like if you don't come from a wealthy network, I just think it's really hard. You can raise some money, but to raise any kind of, I feel like substantial budget, even 50 or 100 grand on there is really difficult. I don't know a lot of people being able to pull that off. So I know we needed at least, hopefully we wanted to go for 100 grand. We raised 50 on WeFunder, and basically WeFunder is like a Kickstarter, except it's based out of Silicon Valley, great company, but it's equity based, and you have to have like the bar for entry is way higher. So you can't just put one up. You have to go through this very vigorous process where they check all your legal, You really have to have all your LLC developed. You got to have all your business plan developed. You got to go through this whole approval process. You got to lay out all the risks. And the benefits of doing this is, one, they don't take everything. So they really look at your film to see if it's going to be something that looks like a viable project to their investors, their network. And then the benefit is, if you get selected, you're immediately put in front of high net worth individuals. So technically anybody can go on WeFunder and become an investor. I think you have to prove they can only invest up to what your income is. So I think you have to kind of state your income. But the great part is there's lots of legitimate, what's the word for it? Qualified US qualified investors, which means they have a net worth of over $1 million.
And so what do you have to give them back? With Kickstarter, it is a donation, so you don't really owe them anything other than the rewards that you've promised them. But with WeFunder, is there some sort of accounting liability? Like you have to keep proper books, and then you're gonna have to send them some sort of distribution in terms of the profits? How does all that work?
Yeah, so it's basically we structured it just like a standard business model for a film. If you were going to get private, it's basically, if we went, let's say we knew private investors and we were going to just go to them and give them terms, it's basically the same thing. We offered a standard waterfall contract on the back end, which is basically, they buy a certain amount of points. I think we sold, we were selling like 35% of the project. And for, at the time, it was like 107 grand. And then we readjusted because COVID, I feel like we would have gotten it all if it wasn't for COVID. We launched literally, I think, within a week of that hitting. So I think there's a lot of scared money at the time. But we still managed to raise 50 grand. And so we basically sold, I think we adjusted our points and we ended up selling like 33% of the project for $50,000. And then the way, I think the standard sort of waterfall, I think some people change it, but the basic waterfall is, from first profits in, once the distributor takes the cut, it's 50% to the, or it's the standard, it's like 50% to the investors and then 50% to the producers. In this case, it would be 33% to the investors and then the other 66% to everyone else that holds equity. And then from there, they make 120% recoup. Or no, they make 120% recoup on their investment. So on their 50,000. So they get 50,000 back plus 20%, which is I think 60,000 total. And then you go into the profit split. So then it's 33% to them, and then 66% to all our other shareholders, which is mostly creatives and a few early investors. And
but they get the first 60,000 is the bottom line of every penny. They get 100% up to $60,000. Gotcha.
Yeah. And we're technically investors too. So actually, John is an investor. He's an early investor, and I am. But we're a different form of equity. There's two forms of equity. It's been a while. There's two kinds, and because we're voting equity, we actually get paid afterwards. So yeah, they get 60,000 back. Then we recoup our investment, which was like the money we put in. Because right now we're both out, on it until it recoups. And then once the film technically hits zero, then you go into, deferments get paid off, and then it's profit participation from then on out.
Gotcha. So how do you actually, once you launch this thing, it sounds like there's some process to filling out the paperwork and all that stuff. But once you launch this thing, how do you get traffic to your page? Like, how do you get people to give money through WeFunder? And I just asked that as someone who's done Kickstarters, it's like an all hands on deck. You start emailing and texting and sending out tweets and just doing everything you can to bring traffic to your page. But how do you do it with WeFunder? Is there any secret sauce that you were able to discover through raising this 50,000?
Yeah. The key thing is we were going in with a much smaller movie there. And there's only like, I think at the time there'd been like 10 movies. It's mainly for tech. So it's like a tech platform where it's mostly tech products, and like it's any kind of business. There's businesses across the array, including films, because an LLC, a film is technically a small business, or like, especially an indie film. So there's only a few at the time. So the competition was a lot lower. So honestly, just by doing all that work, and it was a lot. I mean, I think it took me like 3 months for us to like build the page and satisfy all the requirements. Just by launching, we got a lot of attention because we were the next film on there. I also knew we were a smaller movie. There were some films that I think the biggest raise on there at the time was, I don't know if you've heard of Jim Cummings. He made Thunder Road, and then he won South by in 2018 for Thunder Road, and then he just did this film Wolf of Snow Hollow with Orion, and he's one of the more successful filmmakers in the current independent film space. And he did a film on there, and he raised like $350,000 on there, and he was kind of a hot filmmaker at the time, so he was getting a lot of attention. And then we were competing with another film that had a pretty big actor attached that was getting, and so I knew that. And they all had nothing. They all just had like their business plan and like their they hadn't shot the movie. We'd shot the movie. So like we negated a lot of the risk because the movie was already done. So I was like, well, what do we have that they don't have? I mean, they have like a tier 1 award-winning filmmaker. This other film has like a young A-list actor. So it's like, what do we got? Well, I was like, we got a finished movie. So there's no risk in shooting. So I was like, let's just cut an amazing trailer. Like none of them have trailers. So we really just put a lot of time into cutting like a really fantastic trailer that looked really good. I mean, I think when people watch the trailer, it's one thing is it looks really professional, like good color grade, good grain, all those things that you don't see a lot of times in smaller films. And so, and good music. And so I was like, let's just cut a really great trailer and use that. And then, answer all the questions that come in from investors. They ask you all these questions. And through that, we were able to form these relationships on there I was really attentive, just questions would come in from investors. What's this? I would be on it all day, for weeks and months. And then, eventually over the course of, I think it took us months to slowly raise that. And, through COVID and everything, but, we still managed to raise 50,000. So for me, it's an amazing tool, and I would definitely use it again and recommend it. Yeah.
Yeah. So that does sound like something to check out. So let's talk about your red carpet premiere. It sounds like you guys were able to do your own premiere at the Lemleys in Santa Monica. Maybe you can talk about that a little bit. Number one, how do you go about setting something like that up? What are sort of roughly the costs? And then ultimately, what do you get out of something like that? What is the purpose of doing a red carpet premiere for a film like this?
Yeah, so part of I think the biggest reason we wanted to do it is just to have the traditional celebration of making this movie for 4 years. I mean, I think there's something about having that premiere that's just so satisfying. And also in our contracts to our investors, part of the deal was that they would, especially at a certain level, I think if they invested over $1,000, they were automatically invited to the premiere. So we sort of had an obligation there. And we did play a few festivals. We played the Hollywood Reel Festival, sort of incognito before, and we'd already announced our premiere when we got into that. So we kind of just played that to kind of honestly test our DCP, our digital cinema package. And it was fun. They're like great people over there. But, for this, we really wanted it to be free. Like we wanted it to be free to the cast and crew, free to the investors, and we wanted it to be amazing. We really was like, okay, I think, and this is just like filmmaker to filmmaker. And I think, I don't know if it's just how I feel about it, or I just feel that if you I know a lot of indie films these days are struggling to make a return. I mean, I think it's a very small percentage that actually do ever break even. But I do think that a lot of investors that get into filmmaking, it's not always for the money. I mean, and I really mean this, I really think they do it for the experience. Lots of them have, lots of money already, and they want to get close to Hollywood. They want to have that experience. So I think by throwing an incredible premiere, you're really sort of satisfying, I think, a lot of that in a way. And people, I know that's one thing our EP said. They're like, this is an amazing premiere. Like, thanks for doing this. And yeah, I mean, kind of how I think it's really important. And I think it was really amazing. And how we went about that is just, we created like a really awesome, step and repeat. We got like a red carpet. We bought that. We bought the velvet ropes off Amazon. We rented the Lamely NoHo from them for the night. It was sort of the best location and the best deal we could find. And then so Getty Images, I really wanted Getty Images to be there just to really, and that's really basically the kind of the main photographers that are at big events, like big A-list events. And it kind of solidifies your premiere in the zeitgeist. So I really wanted that, and I wanted for everybody. So we made a deal with Getty, and I got I got Paul Archuleta, who's my first time as an actor on a red carpet. He was the first person that shot me. So I thought that was kind of cool, having that full circle moment. So we had Getty, we had the step and repeat, we had the theater. And then what we did is I wanted it to be big. So I didn't just want it to be one photographer like Getty Images there. I wanted there to be a bunch of photographers. So basically I went on Staff Me Up, we went on Craigslist, and we just wanted alt cameras. So I'm like, let's get a couple, 2 or 3 videographers. Let's get 5 more cameras and let's just blow it up. Let's make it look like this huge event right on Santa Monica Boulevard. So I was like, the rate wasn't much because our budget was pretty strapped at that point. But I was like, hey, if anyone wants to come out and you want like cool shots and you maybe not you're an amateur photographer, like it doesn't matter. If you want to come shoot or you want to build your portfolio, we can pay you a little something and just come shoot for an hour, just for like from 6 to 7, the red carpet. And that was awesome. I mean, we just had like a bunch of people there. We were like right on Santa Monica Boulevard. There were cars just driving by, like causing traffic jams. It just looked like this huge event. And so when I think we had like 120 people came. So we basically got, we were at like 70-80% capacity at that theater. And so, yeah, I mean, it just was awesome. Everyone loved it. And we had people rolling up in Uber Blacks, and just, it was great. And then our investors were really happy, and it was a night to remember. Going through, I think, you've made these indie films, and it can be a real heavy process getting through it. So
and casting crew screenings like you're describing, that is in some ways the reward for a lot of it, because a lot of the actors, the crew, they're not making much money, so it's a celebration of the thing, and they're always super fun. So it sounds like you did a great job with it.
I appreciate it. Yeah.
So let's talk about distribution for this film. In the notes, you said you were going like your YouTube channel, you're putting it up there. But where else can people get this? Why did you go down the typical distribution routes and decide against them? But just talk to that. What's the distribution look like, and why did you choose what you chose?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we did the full rounds. We went for the sales agents, distributors. We got a few offers, mainly split rights. And I just heard our decision was, and this is just part of the state of the industry right now. And it's just, I think a lot of people have different opinions. I know filmmakers that still go the traditional route, but then, I know some really good filmmakers, some award-winning filmmakers, and they'll be like, why didn't you take these deals? And I'll be like, well, are you guys making money with these companies? Like, and they'll be like, no, we haven't seen a cent. So I'm like, well, why are you so adamant that this is the way? That's just as my producer brain being like,
I'm right there with you.
Yeah, and it's like, in what world do we spend? And I try to say to stay positive, about it. It's not really it's just more of like, from a business perspective, it's like, in what world do we make a really good film and spend, $50,000 to $100,000, and then it's just normal that everybody makes nothing, and that there's really no chance of ever making money or ever seeing a dollar for your investors. And And so we were kind of already open to the idea of not doing that, unless you get like an MG that's really, really substantial. I mean, I know a filmmaker that got offered an MG that was literally just his budget, but it was back literally. So they would have broken even and made not a dollar more, because it was like a 15-year deal or something. And I'm like, well, even that, it's like, okay, so you made your money back, but you spent all this time and nobody made anything, and you have basically 15 years until you ever hope to make a cent off it, because they're going to recouping that, and plus everything else they're going to tax on. That's probably never going to happen. So it's still, even things like that. It's like, we were kind of already open to this idea of like, we got a couple offers from, honestly, some companies. I like some of their movies. And I just was, we didn't get an MG, we got split rights offers, but I was like, why sell low? That was my question, is like, so much is happening in our industry. So much is happening. Like, there's so many new companies coming out. There's so many new ways to distribute. And we are, in a sense, at an all-time low. I mean, content has never been worth less per view. Like the total valuation of like where we're at, from the Blu-ray price to the Apple iTunes 99-cent price per view, to like the streaming. Now we got Amazon paying less than a penny per view now. It just keeps seems to keep getting worse. So like, my whole thing was like, why sell now? Like, what if we did, I think we just did a Film Hub launch. So first we distributed on YouTube, because our production company channel has like 2.5 thousand subscribers. So it's John's Noble Hooks, his production company music channel. So we put it out on there, and right now we're at like 6,000 views or something. And it has great analytics, so we can
And
kind of
is it like on YouTube where people pay per view, or it's just you're using the ad revenue as your monetization?
Yeah, right now you have to get 4,000 watch hours. So right now we're up to like we're getting close to 2,000. So we're going to be in monetization really soon on that platform. So right now we're just working towards monetization, but it's getting watched, which is great. And we own it. I mean, I think the main thing right now is that we own the product that we made, and we didn't just give it to a company when we kind of know we'll never see a dollar for 5-7 years minimum. And, if we kind of are just betting on ourselves. So the whole point of doing that is, what if we're kind of looking into the future. Like, what if, because right now where we're at, just not sustainable. Everybody knows it. It's just, that's why the strikes are happening. WGA, DGA is trying to, and then SAG's probably going to strike if they don't come to an agreement here in 3 weeks. So like, that's why all this is happening, is it's just the middle class is gone. It's not a sustainable career. So we're like, why sell our movie now if maybe we come to some kind of there might be a new contract coming out, or some kind of new sort of legal minimums these companies have to pay that are making tons of money off our films and paying us nothing. Or if there's, let's say, a new company that comes out that has a new model that all of a sudden we can make money like it's the 2000s again, like, and we own our movie and we can go right to that. We don't have to get out of a contract. They're not going to take. So I think it's just this idea that, not selling low. Like, if the company is offering you literally no money for your film, the way I see it is they don't believe it's worth anything. Like, if they're going to take it and put it up on their library, but they're not even going to give you $5,000 or $10,000, just the way I see it is that they're really saying, like, we'll take it and we'll make money on it if it makes money, because it's costing us nothing, but we don't believe in it. So that's really how I feel. So I was like, I believe in the movie, so I'm going to keep it. And then I'm also kind of betting on myself as an actor. I'm starring in the movie. I got some big stuff coming up in the next few years. I mean, if myself or John or anyone else in the cast elevates, well, now we own the movie, and potentially the movie might also be a lot more from just the level of the artist. So I think that idea of selling it a low and that fear, that big rush to distribute something I think it's kind of a big trap that still a lot of filmmakers haven't seen. And so I don't know if we made the right choice. All I know is I don't think we made a mistake.
Yeah. And you mentioned Film Hub in there. Have you started to push it into Film Hub?
Honestly, I just launched literally last night on it was I just finally, we did all the QC stuff, and we kind of want to be everywhere. I think it'd be cool to also be on Tubi, be on Amazon. But the cool thing about Film Hub is that we still own the movie. So we can pull it any time if we want to take it in a different direction. So I think it'd be smart too, just because YouTube, I think, is great because you has the most eyeballs on one platform, but it's still sort of a new paradigm. I think it is kind of where the industry is going a little bit, but it's not as established. So I think being on some more traditional platforms is a good idea. And I hear Tubi from a lot of people is kind of working for some people. So I'm interested to try that out.
Yeah, definitely Tubi. I mean, for my two movies, The Pinch and The Rideshare Killer, Tubi has definitely, I don't know about The Pinch because The Pinch was a few years ago, but certainly for The Rideshare Killer, most of our revenue has come from Tubi. That's definitely, for these low budget indie films, that's definitely the platform.
Definitely. Yeah.
So
yeah, I'm excited to get on there. I think it's gonna be fun.
Yeah, for sure. So I just like this. Thank you again for sharing all this information, being so candid. It really is appreciated. So I just like to wrap up the interviews by asking the guests, is there anything you've seen recently that you can recommend, HBO, Netflix, Hulu, to our mostly screenwriting audience?
Yeah, I watched this movie, and I'm trying to remember how it came to me, but it's an 80s movie called Runaway Train. And I don't know if anyone's seen it, but it's got John Voight and Eric Roberts. And anytime I watch these movies, I'm just blown away. I mean, it was shot on film. There's no special effects. It's the acting's superb. The writing, it's a great concept. And the filmmaking is just so, like, they're out in this frozen, I don't know where they shot it, but in Canada, but I'm just thinking of how they did this back then. And just, I guess, the commitment and sort of the way films were made. Like, back then when it was just all out, it had to be on location. You couldn't do anything with a computer. I just think it leads to such authenticity that
Mm-hmm.
I just love. And I mean, definitely my favorite decade of films is the 90s for sure. That's definitely my favorite. And then probably the 2000s and then the 80s. But the 80s is just this movie is unreal. And Eric Roberts is, I mean, you're like
Mm-hmm.
seeing where this guy like kind of films he has done at one point, and you're like, wow, I mean, it's just incredible. And John Voight's
Yeah, yeah.
incredible. And
Yeah,
yeah, I
yeah,
mean, so
that's a
what do
good
you want?
recommendation. If people
Have
haven't
you
seen
seen
that,
it?
I have seen. It's been a few
Yeah.
years, but
Yeah.
yeah, I saw it years ago. Yeah,
It's
it's
just
a good.
great. I mean, it's a great film, and I feel
Hmm.
like people watch it, they can really be inspired, be like, look, man, this is where we came from. So I
Hmm.
feel like any way we can kind of try to get back to that is good.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I agree. So, this interview won't be published for a couple of weeks, so it sounds like you'll be pretty far into the Film Hub
No
distribution.
problem.
But where can people expect to see the Astrid Experience, or where do you think that they could find it? And maybe even give you a recommendation. Where do you want them most to go watch it?
Yeah, I mean, you guys can watch it anywhere. I mean, we got it free on YouTube, and I think that's a great spot. It's in 4K. I mean, the great thing about YouTube is you can upload, I think it's like a 400 up to a 250 gigabyte file. So
Hmm.
it's in ProRes lossless on there. And yeah, you just type in the Astrid Experience, you'll see it come up, full movie 4K. That's a great place to watch it. And then if it's anywhere else by then, I mean, if you just Google it, it should just
Hmm.
show right up for you. Yeah.
Perfect, perfect. Well, Cal, what's the best way for people to keep up with what you're doing? Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, anything comfortable sharing, I will put in the show notes.
Yeah, Instagram's great. It's pretty much the only social media I really do. It's just at Cal Barnes, just my
Okay.
name, at Cal Barnes. And yeah, people can DM me. Um, they can also email me if you have IMDb Pro. You can get in touch with my company on there if you have any questions or want to collaborate or know what I'm doing in the future. I got some big
Perfect.
stuff coming up. So yeah.
So perfect. Well, Cal, I really appreciate you coming on the show and talking about this project. Good luck with finishing up this project and good luck with your future projects as well.
Ashley, thanks so much, man. It's always great to be on here and
Yep.
I love what you're doing. So I
Hey,
appreciate it.
thank you. Yep. Yep. And I'm sure I'll see you again. So good luck.
Yeah, we'll talk soon, man. Take
Perfect.
care.
Take it easy. Bye. SYS's From Concept to Completion Screenwriting course is now available. Just go to www.sellingyourscreenplay.com/screenwriting course. It will take you through every part of writing a screenplay, coming up with a concept, outlining, writing the opening pages, the first act, second act, third act, and then rewriting. And then there's even a module at the end on marketing your screenplay once it's polished and ready to be sent out. We're offering this course in 2 different versions. The first version, you get the course, plus you get 3 analyses from an SYS reader. You'll get 1 analysis on your outline, and then you'll get 2 analyses on your first draft of your screenplay. This is just our introductory price. You're getting 3 full analyses, which is actually the same price as our 3-pack analysis bundle. So you're essentially getting the course for free when you buy the 3 analyses that come with it. And to be clear, you're getting our full analysis with this package. The other version doesn't have the analysis, so you'll have to find some friends or colleagues who will do the feedback portion of the course with you. I'm letting SYS Select members do this version of the course for free. So if you're a member of SYS Select, you already have access to it. You also might consider that as an option. If you join SYS Select, you will get the course as part of that membership too. A big piece of this course is accountability. Once you start the course, you'll get an email every Sunday with that week's assignment. And if you don't complete it, we'll follow up with another reminder the next week. It's easy to pause the course if you need to take some time off, but as long as you're enrolled, you'll continue to get reminders for each section until it's completed. The objective of the course is to get you through it in 6 months so that you have a completed, polished screenplay ready to be sent out. So if you have an idea for a screenplay and you're having a hard time getting it done, this course might be exactly what you need. If this sounds like something you'd like to learn more about, just go to www.sellingyourscreenplay.com/screenwriting course. It's all one word, all lowercase. I will, of course, link to the course in the show notes, and I will put a link to the course on the homepage up in the right-hand sidebar. On the next episode of the podcast, I'm going to be interviewing Kurt Weiser, who was on the podcast a number of years ago in episode 135, where he came on to talk about his feature film, Cam Girl. Well, next week he's back to talk about his latest project, A Voice in Violet, which is a dramatic podcast. He wrote and directed and edited as well. He and his team put together really a great cast, a great project. One of the cast members is Bronson Pinchot from the 80s sitcom Perfect Strangers. So it's a really interesting project. I think obviously I'm a podcaster. I do this. This is not a fiction podcast. It's a nonfiction podcast, sort of, I would say, more typical in the podcasting genre. But I think there's enormous possibilities for podcasts for writers because you're just dealing with audio. So it's very easy to do a story, an audio story. You could certainly do this in the comfort of your home. You could have some friends come in. It doesn't take a lot of equipment to get really high quality recordings. A few $100s, you can probably buy a really high quality audio recorder. You can obviously edit this stuff now on your computer. And we talk about a little bit next week with Kurt. I dig into some of these details. But I just think it's a really great opportunity for writers because it's an easy way to get something produced. There's not a ton of money in this. And that's another thing that we touch on briefly next week as well. I don't know that people are making tons of money from these, fiction podcasts. But there have been some examples where, and Kurt mentions this next week, where one was it was a podcast and then it got picked up into a TV show and stuff. So it can be kind of a proof of concept, but maybe as this medium develops, maybe there will become more of an appetite for that, and maybe there will be some opportunities to monetize this. But in general, I just think it's a great opportunity for screenwriters to get something to produce, to just get something out into the world that they wrote, a story, a creative work. It's a pretty easy, cheap and easy way to do it. And I know I talk about short films, and that's one of the same thing can be said for short films. It's a cheap, easy way to kind of just get something done and get something out into the world, which I'm just a big proponent on. So anyways, Kurt Weiser's back next week to talk about his narrative podcast called A Voice in Violet. So keep an eye out for that episode. That's the show. Thank you for listening.